Hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 30th. This is the Cluster API office hours. Cluster API is a sub-project of SIG Cluster Lifecycle. Please make sure that you abide by the CNCF Code of Conduct, be respectful with everyone. And if you'd like to speak, we use the raise hand feature in Zoom. So feel free to raise your hand and I'll make sure that you get to your turn. Yeah, and then if you can, please add your name to the attendee list and any discussion or question topics that you have in the agenda. With that, let's get started. So we do have one big PSA today. V0.4.0 has been released. So this is the first V1 Alpha 4 release for Cluster API. It's a really big milestone. It's been a long time coming and a lot of people worked hard to get us here. So congrats to everyone. Thank you to everyone who helped, participated. The release notes are uber long. So we try to summarize a little bit and bring out the highlights of things that are important. If you have any questions parsing it, feel free to reach out in Slack and we can discuss. A few things to say about the release. First thing is, if you are using an infrastructure provider which has not yet released their V1 Alpha 4 release, which is the case for I think most, if not all, infra providers right now, you cannot use this release yet. So you'll have to stick with 0.3 until your infra provider has released 0.4, or sorry, their own version for V1 Alpha 4. It is available, like the Docker provider was released with this, so you can test it out with the Docker provider right now. But if you're using providers like Azure or AWS, I think those are still working on getting the release out. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that there has been a reported issue with cluster_ctl, where basically what happens is cluster_ctl will fetch the latest release from the GitHub releases. If you don't specify a release, it will assume latest when you run cluster_ctl init. The problem with that is if you're running that from cluster_ctl v0.3.x, it will try to fetch the latest release, which is now v0.4.0, which means it's incompatible with the V1 Alpha, like V1 Alpha 4 is incompatible with 0.3 cluster_ctl. So you'll get this error message saying you can't use it. The workaround for this is to specify explicitly which version of the core providers to use until you can use 0.4. We're also working on patching this in the release so that the latest release will be the latest compatible release instead of like just the latest GitHub release. But for now, make sure you use the workaround. And make sure you're still using cluster_ctl v0.3.x because v0.4 is only compatible with V1 Alpha 4, which, as I mentioned, is not available for most infrastructure providers right now. So I know that's a lot of info to digest, but does anyone have any questions or any comments about the release in general? I'll open up to the floor. All right, I don't see any hands raising. So we'll keep moving, but if anything comes up, if you have any questions, feel free to open an issue and or reach out in Slack. All right, so I don't think we need to go through release blocking issue updates this week since we just released. Mostly we're just trying to get the infra providers release and then we'll keep going from there. But let's move on to discussion topics. Sagar, you want to talk about the cluster class proposal?
Yeah, thanks, Sissy. I just wanted to talk about the cluster class proposal. I think I went through the proposal yesterday, and I happened to resolve all of the outstanding comments on the proposal. So and I've seen that the activity on this proposal has died down in the past couple of weeks. So I was just thinking that if there are no major blockers for this, can we like maybe go ahead and give it like a final look and try to merge this in? If again, like I said, like if there are like no major blockers left, that would be great. And like if people here haven't looked at the proposal or would like to go and re-review the proposal, please, it would be very helpful if you could do that. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions on Slack as well as on the proposal PR itself.
Sounds good. Any questions for Sagar about the proposal? Okay, in general, in terms of merging proposals, this week might be a bit slower just because we just released V04, so that's really the focus right now. And also I'm the only approver around. So I'd like Vince and Fabrizio to take a final look as well before we merge it. But that being said, let's just make sure that every comment is resolved. Like you said, if there's no major blockers, the reviewers who are listed on the proposal can start LGTMing, and then that way we'll be a good place to merge it once they're back. Cool. All right, Joel, the load balancers.
Yeah, hi. So when we were doing the V1 Alpha 4 planning, there was this big conversation which Justin was running around the load balancers. And there was a big proposal, and I know it didn't make it into V1 Alpha 4. This is becoming more relevant again for us. And so, you know, I did volunteer back then to help out with it. I have now got some time to help out with it. So I wondered if any advancement had been made on that, where I can help. But I noticed that Justin isn't on the call today. So this maybe I'll have to ask again at another time.
Yeah, I think you mean Jason, right? Jason,
yeah.
Yeah, I think he's not here. Probably best way is to reach out on Slack. I know there was a thread. Oh, Nader, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think Jason admitted that he didn't really have the time to take this forward. So we're basically looking for volunteers to take it forward. VMware is still interested. And I was also speaking to someone who, I don't know where they're based, but they're working on some sort of Rancher-based control plane who are also interested. So I think now's the time to try and reconvene a group who's willing to take it forward.
Yeah, perfect. So we're definitely interested in this, and not just our like cluster API regular people. There was some interest in this idea from like another team that works primarily on networking stuff. So we might be able to rope them in to help as well. So I will circulate that internally, but if we know where the enhancement is, then I can start taking a look certainly and see where we can go with the comments and getting it revived.
Sure. Yeah, let's chat tomorrow then, I guess.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nadir.
Awesome. All right, let's move on then. Daniel, you have the next one.
Thanks. Yeah, it's like I'm furiously typing into the document as we're discussing. So yeah, I ran into a kind of interesting situation with cluster cuddle move. There's a set of pre-flight checks, and one of the pre-flight checks goes over all of the current machine objects and checks that each machine object has a node ref. And if it doesn't have a node ref, the move operation fails. And first, I'm wondering why this is necessary. And like open question. I don't have any like preconceived notions. So yeah, that would be great to know about that. And then assuming it is necessary, I'm wondering, like what do we recommend to if cluster cuddle move is part of some sort of like automation, right? Do we recommend that? So for example, you're creating a cluster, and you've deployed like all the machines have been deployed, but then as you're doing the move, maybe one of the machines is fails and or is terminated and then is replaced, right? And so at that point, a new machine object gets created, and it might not have a node ref like that. That's just something that may happen at some point, and then you're running the move and the move fails. So what do we recommend? Do we recommend just retrying the move and relying on this pre-flight check, or do we need to pause reconciliation and then confirm that not just that we've paused reconciliation and no new I guess individual machine objects are like they won't be I guess created, but we also have to check, I think, maybe if there are scaling operations that are underway, like so anyway, so like thinking out loud a little bit, but if anybody has any feedback, I would appreciate that.
So this is one where I wish Fabrizio was here to answer, but my guess, like just looking at the comments, there's a note that says node ref is considered a better signal than infrastructure ready because it ensures the node is up and running. So I believe that was the original intent behind checking for node ref, because you want to make sure that the node has joined the cluster. But I don't think that necessarily takes into account, like you said, a case where it was up and running and then it becomes like unhealthy or something happens where it goes away. So that I think maybe, I don't know if you've already done this, but I would start by looking through issues to see if this is something that's been discussed before or that has come up. And if not, maybe start a new discussion so we don't forget. And I see Nadir has his hand up, so
Yeah, I also suspect that the move code was, if I remember the timeline correctly, it was written concurrently with KCP, but before KCP existed. So it kind of didn't know that it could check KCP status. So I think we really care about control plane node refs. So maybe there could be an update to that logic now.
Okay, should I start a Slack thread, or should I open an issue? What's the right?
Open an issue. I think that's more
okay.
Resilient. But yeah, I think we do check control plane is initialized, but we don't check for the control plane nodes specifically. Yeah, that there, I think this is code that is, like Nadir said, pretty old-ish, so it's possible that it hasn't been updated to use the latest info we have. Arun?
So I have a general question about this. In any cluster, it is not guaranteed that a node is active for any particular point of time. As in, when you're trying to move a node, the source node may die before the move ends. And it's not guaranteed that you create a destination node and it is up before the source node, right? So there's a lot of variation. So what is the thought process in actually ensuring that a node is movable? For a control plane, it is we need a minimum quorum, so we actually will want a set of nodes to be available. But for the worker nodes, are we going to guarantee that the nodes in the original cluster and the destination cluster, the numbers will match? Because that is a fluctuating number both in the source and the destination at any particular point of time.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there's a desired intent, and as long as the destination etc node knows that that's the desired intent, the move is successful, right? After that, it's the role of the cloud providers to service that intent. But should we actually expect it to be serviced before the move? That's the question.
Yeah,
right, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is like a way of trying to ensure that move isn't started while the infrastructure is still provisioning, while that initial provisioning is still happening. But I think maybe we can try to improve it, like refine that logic to make it so that it only checks for like initial provisioning, but it doesn't block on later. Like you said, I don't think having the nodes be like the exact same, I don't think that should be a hard requirement. So yeah, let's bring that into an issue. It sounds like Daniel agrees. and we can take it from there. Awesome. And yeah, I think this is the last discussion topic that we had. Anyone else have anything that they want to bring up, or any questions in general? Any questions from providers about adopting V1 Alpha 4?
So yeah, one of the, I have a question. We are trying to add a provider, but we want to know if it needs to go in tree. I mean, we can have it out of tree, right? So what is the long-term strategy of cluster API? Does it need to be in the SIG's location, or yeah?
Sorry, say that again. What's the question?
So currently all the cloud providers are in sigs.k8s.io, but I saw a recent cloud provider, I think Tinkerbell or something, which was outside.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about the overall strategy in the long term about where
Right.
to put it.
So there's no like requirement to put your provider in sigs.k8s.io. Actually, a bunch of several providers are not in sigs.k8s.io. Like for example, the one Daniel linked in the chat. The ones that are in sigs.k8s.io, those are the ones that are sponsored by SIG Cluster Lifecycle, which means they're part of the SIG. And so it takes a certain it takes like, I'm not exactly sure what the requirements are. I'd have to check with the SIG, but there are some requirements you need to fulfill in order to be like part of the SIG repos. But that doesn't stop you from having your own provider. And it also doesn't stop you from adding it to this list in here. So there's a few things you have to do when you start a new provider. First thing is make it discoverable by adding it to this list in the docs. This pretty much anyone can do as long as it's an existing repo and it's being maintained. Their next thing is to add it into the cluster.ctl like default known provider so that it's an option for your users when they're using cluster.ctl. And that one just need to make sure that it's compatible with cluster.ctl and that there's like some contract that is being fulfilled. And then I guess the last thing is to move it into SIG Cluster Lifecycle, which may not be something you want to do at all, depending on what your objectives are.
Right. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone have anything to add to that, or did I miss anything? No? All right. Cool. Anything else? Anyone want to add anything? Okay, and then I guess we usually do a little like welcome at the end for anyone who's new. So since we have extra time, is there anyone who is new to this meeting who hasn't been here before and just wants to say hi and introduce themselves? Jacob?
Yeah, hi. I'm not really new. I've been here a few times already, but I never introduced myself. And also I left you hanging 2 weeks ago. So sorry for that. But after you didn't do it in the beginning, I then went to the kitchen and prepared some dinner and couldn't leave. But I felt bad about it. So I'm doing it now. I'm Jakob or Jacob. I'm also working for Deutsche Telekom, same as Max Rink. We're in the same team. Yeah, and we're looking to contribute more to Cluster API and to some providers, vSphere especially and Metal 3 maybe. Currently mostly interested in the cluster class stuff because that's something we could really use. And yeah, oh, and my GitHub handle is SCHREJ or Shresh or Shrey, depending on how you pronounce it. Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Welcome. Anyone else? All right. I guess you're the only one for this meeting, but thanks everyone, and see y'all in Slack and online.
Thanks.
Bye.